Translator, Dark Angel. Editor, Kurisu Ling. Han resolved within his heart to journey northward and temper himself upon Balance Mountain. Balance Mountain lay roughly 80 kilometers beyond Gray Cloud Town. Though not counted among the vast peaks that pierced the heavens, its ridges and valleys stretched continuously for just over 100 kilometers. 4 towns nestled around its borders, and the people of those towns lived by the mountain's grace. For within its forests grew precious medicinal herbs, and within its shadows prowled demonic beasts. To a martial artist, both were treasures bestowed by heaven and earth. Unlike the boundless 7 Wind Mountains, whose depths concealed terrifying demonic beasts so powerful that even mighty experts of the spiritual ocean tier dared not trespass too far, the strongest creature in Balance Mountain was merely at the element gathering tier, and such beasts could only be found in its innermost regions. Thus, so long as one did not recklessly venture too deep, Balance Mountain was an excellent training ground for a practitioner of the body refining tier. Ling Han understood clearly. Secluded cultivation alone could never elevate a martial technique to its utmost realm. True mastery required the tempering of life and death battle. Though Ling Dongxing was unwilling to see his son risk danger, he also knew that a true martial artist could not mature like a flower raised in a greenhouse. Furthermore, with Lu Yutong accompanying Ling Han as his protector, there was little cause for fear. Thus, he consented. At present, Ling Dongxing himself was burdened with pressing matters. He was preparing a counterattack against the Cheng clan, while simultaneously reorganizing the Ling clan to reclaim authority that Ling Zhongquan had gradually usurped over these past years. Without delay, Ling Han and Lu Yutong set forth toward Balance Mountain. Because the mountain was near, they carried only light provisions, 2 or 3 changes of clothing each. Even so, the bundles upon their backs were not small. This stirred in Ling Han a faint nostalgia for the spatial ring of his previous life. A spatial ring appeared no different from an ordinary ring, yet within it lay an astonishing expanse capable of storing countless items. For travel, it was a convenience beyond compare. Alas, the art of forging spatial rings had long been lost to the ages. Only a pitiful few remained in existence. In his previous life, only experts, at least at the Flower Blossom tier, possessed the qualification to own one. Otherwise, even if fortune delivered such a treasure into one's hands, it would merely invite fatal calamity. A spatial ring was a treasure of immeasurable value. They proceeded on foot. To martial artists, 80 kilometers was trivial. They completed the journey in merely 2 hours. Departing in the morning, they had already stepped into the domain of Balance Mountain by noon. In the distance, tiger roars reverberated and monkeys shrieked among the branches. A fragrant yet primitive and desolate aura swept toward them, the breath of untamed wilderness. "Let's go," Ling Han said as he strode ahead. "As long as it is a demonic beast of the body refining tier, you need not act. Leave it to me." "Very well." Lu Yutong replied with a nod. Yet, Balance Mountain was not overflowing with demonic beasts. Though they searched deliberately, they encountered none, not even ordinary wild beasts. As the sky gradually dimmed, hunger stirred within them. They had brought only a small amount of dry rations for emergencies, intending instead to hunt demonic beasts for sustenance. "We must quickly hunt a demonic beast. Otherwise, we'll go hungry tonight," Ling Han said, brandishing the iron sword in his hand. He had purchased this blade before departing. It had cost 10 silver coins, a considerable expense. It was sufficient against demonic beasts of the body refining tier, but against one at the element gathering tier, it would not even scratch its hide. Moreover, he himself was no match for a demonic beast of the element gathering tier. Lu Yutong suddenly halted. "What is it? Did you hear something?" Ling Han asked, excitement flickering in his eyes. "My shoelaces came undone," Lu Yutong said as she crouched down. Ling Han had not expected this icy beauty to possess even a trace of humor. He shrugged and waited until she rose, and they resumed walking. Yet before long, she crouched again. "Your shoelaces came undone once more?" Ling Han asked. "No, I heard something." Lu Yutong's gaze fixed upon a certain direction, her expression still frosty and unmoved. Indeed, her sense of humor was as cold as her demeanor. Ling Han followed her gaze. Being at the element gathering tier, her sight and hearing far surpassed his own. The shrubs ahead trembled as though something forced its way through. Soon, a massive wolf's head emerged, followed by its body. It was the size of a water buffalo, its fur blood red, its hide marred by scattered patches of rotting scars. The sight was grotesque. Our luck is not bad. It's a rotten blood wolf. Ling Han's eyes gleamed. The cultivation of the indestructible Heaven Scroll required precious materials, and fresh demonic beast blood was presently the finest available resource. The rotten blood wolf ranked among the strongest beasts within the body refining tier. Be careful, Lu Yutong warned. A mature rotten blood wolf was at the 9th layer of body refining tier. Moreover, demonic beasts possessed innate advantages in strength and defense over humans, even when their cultivation levels were equal. In contrast, martial artists relied upon martial techniques and weapons to greatly amplify their might. Yet Ling Han was only at the 7th layer of body refining tier. The gulf between him and the rotten blood wolf was vast, and in a clash with a demonic beast, death could descend at any instant. There was no such thing as shouting "stop" or "I surrender." "Don't worry," Ling Han said with a smile. As he gripped the iron sword, his expression turned solemn. The rotten blood wolf released low, rumbling growls. Before it stood 2 humans. The man seemed unthreatening, but the woman behind him inspired dread. Yet, by nature, a demonic beast was ferocious and unwilling to relinquish prey. Demonic beast flesh and blood were supreme nourishment to martial artists, but martial artists were likewise rich nourishment to demonic beasts. The rotten blood wolf remained cautious. It did not attack at once. "Yutong, step back," Ling Han said. Wolves were patient and vigilant creatures. It had surely sensed the hidden strength within Lu Yutong. Lu Yutong's brows knit faintly. At the current distance, she could intervene swiftly if needed. But if she withdrew further and Ling Han faced peril, she might be unable to save him in time. "Trust me," Ling Han said with a calm smile. After a moment's hesitation, Lu Yutong slowly stepped back. At once, the rotten blood wolf's ferocity flared. Its foreclaws dug into the earth, jaws opening to reveal 2 rows of dagger-like teeth that exuded a chilling aura. Ling Han crooked a finger. "You big stupid dog, come, come, come! Ow!" The rotten blood wolf howled and lunged with astonishing speed. Ling Han did not panic. With a single sweep of his blade, the shocking electricity sword arts was unleashed. Shua! Though only 1 thrust was made, 2 streaks of cold light flashed forth. One the iron sword itself, the other a streak of white energy. "Sword chi!" Lu Yutong exclaimed in shock. Sword chi was the mark of a true swordsman, just as saber chi signified a master of the blade. It was incomparably sharp and overwhelmingly powerful. She herself had yet to form sword chi, yet she knew well its difficulty. An uncle of hers, hailed as a sword genius, had immersed himself in the way of the sword for 5 full years before finally condensing sword chi. Was this fellow even human? Ling Han felt no surprise. To him, forming sword chi was merely natural. His true aspiration was sword ray. Sword ray was the tangible, solidified form of sword chi, its power far superior. Unfortunately, in his previous life, he had not devoted sufficient time to the sword and had only achieved sword chi, never sword ray. To form sword ray, a single thrust must release dozens of streaks of sword chi, which were then condensed into a unified ray. Just now, he had produced only a single strand of sword chi. The road ahead remained long. Beyond sword ray lay sword heart, the ultimate summit of the sword path. Yet against a rotten blood wolf, a single strand of sword chi was already more than sufficient. As the shocking electricity sword arts unfurled like thunder tearing across the heavens, Ling Han's long sword roamed with unbridled freedom, his figure drifting as lightly as a startled crane. Each arc of the blade carried the chill of lightning. Each turn of his wrist traced a silver thread through the air. Interwoven with the shocking electricity sword arts was the exiting cloud step. With every stride spanning 4 or 5 meters, he shifted left, then right, at times darting forward like an arrow loosed from a bow, at times retreating like mist carried by the wind. His footwork was strange and wondrous, swift to the extreme, his silhouette dissolving into a blur before the eyes of any who tried to follow. Watching from the side, Lu Yutong could not help but nod inwardly. If she were to suppress her cultivation to the 7th layer of body refining tier, she knew with certainty that she would not perform as effortlessly as Ling Han. By now, she would likely be beset with peril from every direction. After all, the gulf between Ling Han and his foe was vast. 2 full layers of cultivation. Moreover, his opponent was no ordinary adversary, but a demonic beast. Ordinarily, when a martial artist crossed blades with a demonic beast, he required at least a slight edge in cultivation to claim victory. If their cultivation levels were roughly equal, the martial artist's chance of defeat was higher. Not every martial artist was born a battle genius, after all. Yet Ling Han's sword strokes grew ever more fluid, like flowing water finding its path. His steps blended seamlessly with his blade, natural and smooth, as though he were savoring the joy of combat itself. In his previous life, he had devoted far too much of his heart to the Tao of alchemy. When it came to martial arts, he had cared only for cultivation level. His ascent had been a mere traversal of heights, a superficial grasp of martial ways. But now, as he once more trod the path of martial arts, he suddenly discovered that this path too held endless fascination. The rotten blood wolf had unwittingly become his whetstone. Through it, he practiced his techniques to his heart's content, refining and tempering his comprehension of the shocking electricity sword arts. 10 minutes passed. The rotten blood wolf was now riddled with cuts and bruises, crimson lines crisscrossing its hide. Fear flickered within its beastly eyes. This frail-looking human was in truth so formidable. It did not wish to retreat, yet it feared even more that not only would the two humans escape its fangs, but that it itself would become prey to them. "There's no escape," Ling Han laughed loudly. His sword moved as his will commanded. Amidst the flashes of cold light, 2 streaks of sword chi burst forth simultaneously. 2 streaks of sword chi! At last, he had broken through. Pooh! Blood sprayed outward as a scarlet blossom erupted upon the rotten blood wolf's neck. Its massive body crashed to the ground with a heavy thud. Its eyes remained wide open, as though even in death, it could not accept that a human at the 7th layer of body-refining tier had truly slain it. Demonic beasts possessed keen intelligence. The more powerful among them could even rival human intellect. Ling Han nodded slightly. The might of 2 streaks of sword chi was indeed tremendous. Previously, a single streak had merely allowed him to contend evenly with the rotten blood wolf, but 2 streaks enabled him to end its life in an instant. As expected, even when cultivation levels were identical, the actual combat strength between martial artists could differ greatly. At the side, Lu Yutong was once again rendered speechless with shock. In such a short span of time, Ling Han had advanced from 1 streak of sword chi to 2. If her uncle were to learn of this, would he not be so ashamed as to leap into a river and drown himself? That uncle had spent over 30 years to cultivate 4 streaks of sword chi, and was hailed throughout the clan as a genius swordsman. Yet when compared to Ling Han, what she did not know was how far ahead Ling Han's starting point lay, nor how terrifying his comprehension was. Otherwise, how could he have reached heaven tier at merely 200 years of age in his previous life? "Dinner's settled," Ling Han said with a grin. The two of them soon found a small brook. Settling beside its murmuring waters, they began to clean the corpse of the rotten blood wolf. They would naturally not squander the blood of a demonic beast. Every drop was carefully collected into a pouch. Later, Ling Han would bathe in this blood, absorbing its essence to temper his own body. They lit a fire and cut off one of the wolf's legs for roasting. A sprinkle of salt was added. Before long, a rich fragrance wafted through the air. One could not be overly particular when journeying through the wilderness. By the time they had washed the wolf's leg clean with the brook's water and allowed it to dry, night had already fallen completely. They did not press onward. Instead, they sat cross-legged beside the brook and began to cultivate. Ling Han immersed himself in the demonic beast's blood. Circulating the indestructible Heaven Scroll, he drew forth the concentrated essence within the blood and absorbed it for his own use. After only slightly more than 10 minutes, the once thick, sticky beast's blood thinned into a watery, diluted liquid. The essence contained within had been completely exhausted. Just as I thought, strengthening one's physique is truly a difficult endeavor. Ling Han mused. Consider this example. If a martial artist at the element gathering tier consciously deployed origin power to cloak his body in defense, and a body refining tier martial artist attacked freely, it would be impossible for the latter to breach that layer of protection. However, if the element gathering tier martial artist did not actively defend, then his natural defense was not much stronger than that of a body-refining tier martial artist. For instance, should an element-gathering tier martial artist be ambushed in his sleep by a body-refining tier martial artist, he could very well perish due to carelessness. In contrast, strengthening one's physique would render that defense passive and everlasting, effective even while asleep or unconscious. Yet tempering the physique was an exceedingly arduous task, demanding vast amounts of precious natural treasures. In his previous life, Ling Han had belonged to the former category and had invested little effort in fortifying his physique. Of course, the reason this beast's blood was refined so swiftly lay in the terrifying power and efficiency of the indestructible Heaven Scroll. If it had been some other technique, such as the stone skin skill, it might have required 3 or 4 days to fully refine the same amount. Ling Han could distinctly sense that his muscles had grown denser and his skin tougher. If a sharp stone were dragged across his skin, at most it would leave only a pale white mark. Before long, he would achieve the physique of Dead Tree Tier. After the night passed, the two resumed their ascent into the mountains, seeking demonic beasts with which to battle. From the second day onward, it seemed their fortune had shifted. They encountered demonic beasts one after another. This not only granted Ling Han abundant opportunities to accumulate real combat experience, but also provided him with a steady supply of beast blood, allowing his cultivation of the indestructible Heaven Scroll to advance without pause. On the 4th day, they emerged from the forest and saw 5 figures seated in a clearing not far ahead. The 5 appeared to have just endured a fierce battle. Each looked disheveled and weary. All 5 were youths, none yet 20 years old. 3 had reached the 9th layer of body refining tier, while the remaining 2 were at the 8th layer. In a modest place like Gray Cloud Town, based solely on their individual cultivation levels, they could undoubtedly be lauded as geniuses. Lu Yutong immediately drew out a veil to conceal her face. Her beauty was too transcendent. Such unearthly allure easily invited trouble, though she herself feared none of it. "Brother, which town do you hail from?" one of the young men called out. His tone brimmed with confidence, hinting that he likely belonged to a large and affluent clan. Ling Han smiled faintly. "Gray Cloud Town. We're all from Guo Rock Town." The young man continued, gesturing as he introduced his companions. "I am Liu Dong. This is Chen Peng Ju. That's Li Hao. That fellow is Zhou Chang. And this beauty here is Zhu Shui, the noble Miss Zhu." Ling Han inclined his head toward the 5. "Ling Han, and this is Liu Yutong. Ling Han, we just discovered a green spiritual fruit. However, a very powerful demonic beast is guarding it, so we've no way of approaching." "What do you say? Interested in working together?" Liu Dong suggested, revealing the true purpose behind his friendly demeanor. "Oh?" Ling Han's heart stirred. A green spiritual fruit not only enhanced a martial artist's cultivation, but was also immensely beneficial for one preparing to break through to the element-gathering tier. The 5 before him were already close to the peak of the 9th layer of body-refining tier. If they consumed a green spiritual fruit at this juncture, it would greatly aid their breakthrough. Spiritual fruits differed from alchemical pills. They were pure natural treasures. Consuming them bore no side effects, unlike alchemical pills, where repeated use would cause poisonous impurities to accumulate within the body. However, certain spiritual fruits possessed such overwhelming effects that they had to be refined into pills before consumption. Otherwise, swallowing them directly would be akin to courting death. "What level is the demonic beast?" Ling Han asked. "Miasma Cloud Beast, 9th layer of body refining tier," Zhou Chang replied. Ling Han immediately understood why even these 5 were helpless. In battle, the Miasma Cloud Beast continuously emitted vast amounts of poisonous miasma. Fighters would be forced to hold their breath. But in the midst of a fierce struggle, even for a martial artist, how long could one truly refrain from breathing? Thus, without overwhelming strength to end the fight in a short span, defeating a Miasma Cloud Beast would be impossible. However, before that, you must first take a saber strike from me to prove you possess sufficient strength, Li Hao declared, brandishing the saber in his hand. His face wore an aloof expression, clearly intent on showing off his prowess.